So what's the scope of emergency aid level 2? It is these things in front of you. So you need to know how to dial 999 and get help from the emergency services, understand the importance of getting help, reassure someone at the scene of an emergency. You also need to be able to help a casualty who is unconscious, help someone who is bleeding, help someone with a burn, and help someone who is having an asthma attack. So what you're going to need to join in tonight is you are going to need something to demonstrate CPR on. What's CPR? It's that thing where you sort of pump on the outside to help someone, help revive someone that's heart isn't working. So for example, I've got Barney the dinosaur here. He's just about big enough for me to do CPR on. So you need to go and find something a bit like Barney or Kevin the Carrot. Andy's got Kevin the Carrot there. So either a big cuddly toy, or if you can't think of anything else, then those cushions behind you, Thomas, will be absolutely fine. That's it, Thomas, well done. So you're going to need a cuddly toy, a couple of cushions, or a pillow to go and do CPR on. Please also find yourself a pen and paper. Find yourself pen and paper because there is a test at the end of this. So something to do CPR on and the pen and paper for the test. Find both of those things now. Go, go, go. If you haven't got either of those things, go and do it now. So the first thing we need to look at is how tonight's going to work, how you're going to get your emergency aid level 2. So the emergency aid level 2 is a badge. And if you join in with us tonight and then submit a bit of evidence to us, then we will make sure you get your badge. So all you need to do is join in with tonight's practical training session, take the short test at the end, and while you're doing CPR, which Andy's going to show you in a minute, persuade someone around you, someone in your house, to take a picture of you doing CPR. Send that picture and take a picture of your test, and send the picture of your test and the picture of you doing CPR to remotescouting@leatherheaddistrictscouts.org.uk. Okay, if you do that, 2 pictures, send them to that address, then we will be really happy to make sure that your cub leader, your Okala, knows that you've done this and be able to get your badge. So where we normally start in all first aid training is by talking to the doctor, Dr. ABC or Doctors ABC. So Andy will give you a bit of a practical demonstration out in a second, but this is something pretty critical to remember. So what does Doctors ABC stands for? Danger. So whenever you find someone who might be lying on the floor, you don't know why they're lying on the floor. Whatever's put them on the floor may put you on the floor next. So make sure you check for danger, up, around, smell the air, all of that sort of stuff. Response. Response is when you've got a person lying on the floor in front of you and you want to know if they're responsive, you can shout at them, and if they shout back, then you know they are. Shout is when you're shouting for help. Airway is making sure they can breathe. Breathing is seeing if they are breathing. And C, checking for catastrophic bleeding. So if they're leaking from a big part of their body, you're going to want to know about it. So that's Doctors ABC. Now to make that a little bit more real, I'm going to hand over to Andy. So I'm just going to stop sharing my own screen.
It goes on. So I've, as you can see, got Kevin the Carrot. He's lying on the floor here. So the first thing I'm going to do when I find my casualty, the person who I'm trying to help, I'm going to have a look around and see if there are any dangers. What could have hurt Kevin? Why is he in that situation? I don't want to be in the same situation as Kevin. So I can looking at the scene that I've set. You can see a big black tray in the corner. Did that hurt him somehow? Did something come from above? Or has he just fainted? Is there something in the room that's going to hurt him, that you can't necessarily see? So that's danger. We're going to have a look for danger. And the way we look for danger when we do first aid training or anything like that is we do jazz hands, because we're looking around here, we're looking around there, we're looking everywhere. But Kevin, I've decided that the room is clear and I need to try and get the R bit, the R of doctor. I need to get a response. Fortunately, I know Kevin's name. So I'm going to call him by his name. Kevin, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Kevin? He's not responding. Quite a few people would talk back to you when you started shouting to them. Now, if Kevin's still not responding, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right up close to his ears and I'm going to shout in his ears. Kevin, can you hear me? Can you open your eyes for me? Kevin, can you hear me? Can you open your eyes for me? Now, I've asked him to open his eyes because that's a really good positive response that you can look out for. If you ask someone to open they might not be able to speak. If they're still not responding after shouting in their ears, you can try tapping them on the shoulders, which is pretty tricky on a carrot. But I'm going to tap him on the shoulders and I'm going to go, Kevin, can you hear me? Can you open your eyes? Normally tapping someone on the shoulders would help. If that doesn't work, I've decided he's not responsive. He's unconscious. So then the S bit, I'm going to shout, help, help. That's you trying to get someone else to come and help you look after this person who's not responding. The next thing we're going to look at is airway. We need to make sure that the casualty's airway is open, so the air can definitely get into their lungs. The way to do that is we're going to tip their head back to open their mouth so they can breathe. As an example of how this helps, if you tip your head right the way forward onto your chin and try and take a deep breath, you'll find it harder than if you tip your head up and you can take a lot more air in. So that's what I'm going to do with Kevin. I'm going to tip his head back. I'm going to place, in this case, a whole hand, but if it's a real person, probably a couple of fingers on their forehead, a couple on their chin, tip the head back and open the mouth. And that's making sure their airway is open. B is breathing. We need to see if they're breathing or not. Now, there's a few ways we can determine whether they're breathing. We're going to do them all at once. We're going to use multiple senses to check whether someone's breathing or not. We're going to listen. We're going to listen to see if we can hear breath sounds in their mouth. We're going to look to see if their chest is going up and down. Because when you breathe in, your chest goes up and down as your lungs fill with air. So we're going to hear and see, and then if you get as close as you can, you might also be able to feel the breath on your cheek when they breathe out. And we're going to do that for 10 whole seconds. So tilt the head back, hold the mouth open, and I'm going to put my head right to his mouth and listen for 10 seconds. And in those 10 seconds, I will be able to determine whether he's breathing or not. And the C bit, check for catastrophic bleeding is what we call. So if they're breathing, we want to have a quick look and see if they're bleeding from anywhere. If there's a lot of blood, then that's something that you need to be really worried about. But if you can't see anything obvious, then we'll just assume they're not bleeding to start with. If they're not breathing, we're going to need to do CPR. CPR is a method of massaging a person's heart to keep the blood flowing around their body. And the way we're going to do that is with chest compressions. So we're going to find the center of the person's chest. If you feel on just where your ribs start to join up together, generally between the nipples, you'll find that that's the best place to apply pressure, and that's where you're going to be doing CPR, chest compressions rather. So I can't find, I'm going to have to guess where it is on Kevin because he's a soft toy, but I'm going to guess about where his shirt button's up here. I'm going to place my two hands over the top. I'm not going to interlock my fingers because that after a little bit of time will start to hurt. And I'm going to lean straight over the top of him and exert pressure downwards about, he says trying to remember where he's put the camera, about 3 inches, about 5 centimeters. That's sort of quite deep, deeper than you might think. And we're going to do 30 of those. And then we would need to do 2 breaths into their mouths. Now, you need to be careful with this because it might be that they've been sick. In this case, it might be carrot soup, but I doubt it'd be that nice. So you need to make sure there's nothing in their mouth. You would have seen this probably when you checked their airway earlier. You'd have heard a gurgling And if there's anything in their mouth, you need to get it out, otherwise they're not going to breathe properly. You're going to make a seal around their mouth with your mouth. You're going to pinch their nose whilst their head's still tilted back, and you're going to blow in twice, 2 normal breaths to get into their lungs. If that doesn't work on either of the times, don't do any more, just keep doing chest compressions. Those breaths aren't that important in the grand schemes of this. If you can get 1 or 2 in over the course of you doing CPR, that's brilliant. But don't keep trying until you get breath in, because the compressions on the chest will be more important. So I'm going to do 30 chest compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Now I counted those at about 120 beats per minute. Now there are a few songs, and I'm sure we'll go through a few of those in a minute as to what 120 beats per minute is, but Staying Alive by the Bee Gees, ask your parents who the Bee Gees are, is quite a good one. There are a few others around, but we'll go through a few more of those in a minute. After you've done 30, 2 rescue breaths, pinch his nose, tip his head back, and then carry on with much of the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. Now, one thing I started doing, which it was really bad technique and it was silly of me to show you, is I was bending my elbows. After a while, you're not actually going to be applying any pressure. You need to lock your arms straight over the top and use your whole body to push down, pivoting at your hips, because you don't want to bend your arms too much and not apply any pressure. So that's CPR, Malcolm.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Andy. Okay, everyone, what you need to do is to have a go at that one. And while you're doing it, make sure there's someone there that can take a picture of you doing good CPR practice so you can send in the evidence. So take a couple of minutes, do it now. We're just going to watch you on gallery view and make sure you're all having a go at this. Aren't we, Barney?
I like how some people are doing it with their hats on still. It amuses me.
Okay. So I'm looking at Hayden, Luke, Sarah, Emlyn. There's certainly there's something being resuscitated down there. Brilliant. Don't forget the rescue breaths though. Lots of the chest compressions. Remember the rescue breaths as well. Remember to tilt the head back, hold the nose, 2 rescue breaths, and then carry on with the chest compressions.
The only time you'll stop doing this is when someone else tells you to stop, a medical professional like a paramedic. Don't just stop as they come through the door. They might want you to carry on while they get ready to take over. It won't be an instant thing. They'll want you to keep going, especially if you're doing a good job. They like to let people carry on doing a good job if they are.
Okay, I'm really loving what you're all doing now. Just make sure someone's got a photograph of this so they can send it in and we can see you've been doing this. It's best if you don't try and take it yourself. It's really difficult to do this doing a selfie while doing CPR with one hand. It doesn't really work that well. It's not great first aid technique. Kevin looks very happy over there.
He does, sat there watching.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, he's had a tough time, but you know, he's making a good recovery now.
Is everyone else? Are we ready for me to show you this?
Go for it, Andy.
Everyone, right? Okay. So, should you go through all of that? You've checked that they're not. You've checked that they're not conscious. They're not responsive, but they are breathing. You've checked their breathing. They've not got anything in their mouths. You can hear and see and feel them breathing on your face. Then once they're like this, they're going to be a bit uncomfortable. It's going to be, if they're unwell at any point and they're sick, they're going to gargle on it, and that's not a very good thing. So what we need to do is put them into something we call the recovery position. Now, this is a fairly comfortable position to put a casualty in. It allows you to keep monitoring their state. It allows them to be sick and it not cause any problems. So I'm going to demonstrate that for you now. What you need to do is kneel down by the side of your patient in the direction you're going to pull them towards you. So make sure there's plenty of space behind you to shuffle back. We're going to make sure the legs are together, or fairly together. We're going to bring the arm that's nearest to you out straight, like this. What we're going to do at this point is we're going to have a look and see if they've got any rings or if they've got any glasses that might hurt them when we do this. So in this case, I'm going to take my wife's glasses off, and I'm going to place them in that outstretched hand, because there's nothing worse than when you can't see properly to wake up in an unusual place or an unusual circumstance and not have your glasses to hand. So they're going to be safely in the hand there. If the person's got any rings on their hands, you might need to, instead of taking them off, just try turning them around to any of those really expensive diamonds that you buy, wives and things, like I did. It's a huge rock. You turn it around and place it on the inside of the hand, so when you place a hand on their cheek in a minute, it's not going to hurt them, it's not going to get damaged, and it's not going to damage the person's cheek either. So we're going to reach across and grab the hand that's furthest away from you, bring it across, twiddling the rings there, and place it gently on their face. Now, my actor has done a good job there. If you've got someone who's unconscious, they're not going to hold their position that you put them in. A bit like that. They're going to be all floppy, and their arm's going to flop back. So you're going to have to hold it in position. So get the arm, put it next to their face, and hold it there. What you're then going to do is bring the leg that's furthest away from you up, and you're going to put your hand to the outside of the leg. You don't want to go to the inside of the leg, because that's not very, I don't know, PC, courteous. People don't necessarily like you doing that. So if you're going to go to the outside of the leg, you're going to reach round underneath the knee and lift the leg up until the foot's flat on the ground. Again, you need to hold on to that, because if they're unconscious, it's just going to flop over. You're again going to gently shuffle backwards, pulling the knee towards you, and your casualty will naturally fall over onto their side. The knee that you lifted up and pulled over with, if you bring that further up towards you and straighten it out, they're not going to fall over. You then need to make sure their head is still tilted back so they can breathe. And you need to keep an eye on their breathing and make sure they still are breathing. And if they stop, you need to roll them back and do what we did earlier, CPR. If they're going to be like this for a long period of time, you might consider, or might be told by the ambulance service over the phone, to roll them over and put them in the other orientation. So roll them onto the other side, if there's room to do so.
Okay, so we've looked at emergency life support. I'm just going to sit Barney over there so I can use both hands. Looked at emergency life support and doctor's ABC. So in two scenarios, scenario one, where you have an unconscious non-breathing casualty, and scenario two, where you have an unconscious breathing casualty and the recovery position. So what we'd like you to do now is, if you can find someone or something to practice putting in the recovery position, why don't you have a little go at scenario two now? Go on, have a go. You can use a living person because you're not pummeling their chest this time.
They need to be a willing volunteer. Don't knock them unconscious.
Yeah, normally a willing volunteer. So little brothers, big brothers, parents, absolutely fine.
Again, if there's someone else who can take a photograph of this, that'd be great. If it's a bit difficult, there's only two of you, then perhaps have another go later when there's someone available to take a photograph.
Oh, there's lots of good work going on there. I like what you're doing, Lewis and Dylan. That looks lovely. Okay, great stuff. So we need to talk about some other stuff. In the level 2 emergency aid badge, there's a bit of emphasis on dialing 999 for help. So what I've done is I've looked at the fabulous NHS pages. So if you were to Google NHS when to call 999, you would get this page. And I've just summarized some of the material that's on that page in the next couple of slides. And it essentially answers the question when to dial 999, what they will ask you, and how you can help an ambulance crew. And I'm just going to look at the first couple of those things. So when you dial 999, or in fact you can dial 112. In all of Europe, 112 also works, and in many places internationally, 112 works. But 999 is what we usually call here in the UK. It basically says two things. When you have a medical emergency, that is when someone is seriously ill or injured or their life is at risk. So all of the sort of things that are listed down there. When someone is unconscious, don't just assume that if they come back to consciousness, you shouldn't call 999. You should. If they're having some sort of seizure, it used to be called fits, but they're having some sort of seizure, or if they've got severe chest pain, or you suspect they might be having a heart attack, if they're having a stroke, if they're having difficulties breathing, or they're having severe bleeding that can't be stopped. If they're having such a severe allergic reaction to something that they've kind of swollen up, or if they've burnt themselves or scalded themselves in a really big way. So those are the sort of medical emergencies you should call 999 for. You should also call 999 if there's been some sort of major accident. So a fall from height, or a road traffic accident, a stabbing, a shooting, or a serious head injury. So a lot of charming stuff there from the NHS about when to call 999. When you do, you will talk to an operator, and they're very, very well trained 999 operators. They will ask you first where you are, so they want to work out your location, and it really helps to understand exactly where you are and what your postcode is and what your street name is and stuff like that. So if, for example, you were calling from your scout hut, how many would you know what your postcode is at your scout hut? Very, very few of you, I suspect. I've had to call 999 from the first Ashton Scout Hut, and they didn't even believe which road it was on. The road's called Woodfield, and they wanted it to be called Woodfield Lane, which is a completely different road. So I had to explain. So enough information for them to absolutely find you. They'll sometimes ask what the number of the phone you're calling from is, because they want to know how to call you back if you disconnect. And then they'll ask you generally what's happened. Depending on what you answer with what's happened, they might ask something about the casualty themselves. How old are they? Is it a man or a woman? Is it something that usually happens to them? They will definitely ask, is the person awake or conscious and breathing? So if it's an unconscious and a non-breathing casualty, they will come a lot quicker than if you've got someone that's sort of awake and sitting up. They may ask about serious bleeding or chest pain, and if there's an injury, what is it and how would it happen? So all of these sorts of stuff that they will ask you. So when you're about to call 999, it's worth thinking of the answers to those things as you're dialing, just so that you know what's happening. So in the other parts of the badge that we've got to look at, we have to look at some first aid conditions. And the first one of those we will look at is bleeding. So we do, we have a fair bit of bleeding in the Scouts. I don't know about the Cubs, but in the Scouts, we teach Scouts how to use knives. And Scouts sometimes cut themselves with knives. And so on camps, we get a lot of little cuts and nicks where Scouts have been slightly less than careful and have managed to just cut themselves slightly. And the thing we do with bleeding is always the same. The first and most immediate thing to do with any sort of bleeding is to take some sort of absorbent material, place it on the site of the bleeding, and hold it down. Apply direct pressure on that wound. And sometimes you have to apply that direct pressure for 10 or maybe 15 minutes until it stops bleeding, and you can have a look at what's under there, clean it and dress it, and decide, whether it requires more attention. You can decide whether you can put a plaster on it and it'll be fine, or if you need to take it in and have someone else look at it. So the most important thing is immediately apply direct pressure. Now, incidentally, as we're going through this, if you have any stories you'd like to tell us about, particular cuts and nicks you've had on camp, or in fact you've got any questions about any of the material we're going through, you can find the raise hands button. So it's normally under participant.
Hello. Well, I've got quite a bad thing that happened to me on camp.
Okie dokie.
We were playing. We had some free time, and we were playing in the woods. And then me and my other friend, we both tripped over a rock and cut our knee. And then you could let it. I felt like you could see the bone. It felt so deep, and you couldn't obviously see the bone, but it was really deep. And I thought that you could. And I screamed in pain, but then I kept on rolling down, and I bumped my stomach onto a small tree. That my stomach went into the tree, and I was like screaming in pain.
Very much in the walls. And how did they help you?
So I didn't tell anyone about it straight away because I just wanted to carry on playing. And they helped me by like you said, they applied a bit of pressure to it, and then they decided that they took it to like the first aid tent, and they put like a massive plaster on it and said that if it doesn't, in the morning, if it's still bleeding or it's bad, come back to us. And yeah, it was fine in the morning. It just hurt a lot.
I like how you went. It was a really deep cut. Could see a bit of bone, but I wanted to carry on playing, so didn't really mention
Just a flesh wound.
This wasn't at camp. It was at school. I was playing bulldog, and I tripped over, and I really badly broke my arm. I had to have surgery because it went kajunk, and there was a massive lump on my wrist.
I told you Cubs love these sorts of stories, Andy.
Yeah.
This is what Cubs sessions are like.
Is kajunk a medical term that they use at the hospital?
Just before Bish Bash Bosh, I think.
Yeah.
It wasn't like anything that happened. It was I was at this Cub camp, and I was helping everyone. I was helping the leaders unpack, take down the medical tent, and I saw like all the things, and I found out what like all they were all for.
Did they show you the saw?
What?
Did they show you the saw for when they have to amputate your leg? No, they don't.
They put the sick bucket on my head though.
Okay. Nice.
So quickly looking at all the Cub leaders on the call, working out which one that might have been.
The ones with their heads in their hands.
Hello, it was a bit gross, but yesterday I pulled my tooth out, and and basically my tooth was all bleeding like properly, so we had to put lots of pressure on.
Yeah, and it's kind of difficult in your mouth, isn't it, to put pressure on?
Yeah.
When you cut your tongue, how do you apply direct pressure to your tongue? You don't really. You just have to wait.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, horrible.
So once I was at my friend's party, his 5th party, maybe it was 6th, and it was a fun in a foam place, and I'm pretty sure it was an accident, it might have been on purpose, but someone pushed me off like a ledge, and my arm hit someone's knee and broke the bone.
Oh.
That's called 122 or 112 or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean we get some pretty nasty stuff.
Broken bones.
In the Scouts sometimes. The one that reminds me of is we've all been to Boyderhurst, right, the Scout campsite, and you've seen the trolleys at Boyderhurst. One of the worst injuries I've seen was kids messing around, pulling each other on those trolleys, and one of the kids kind of got stuck under the wheels, and it broke his ankle. And so please don't play with the trolleys at Boyderhurst. It's not great. Hello there.
So once I was at school and I was playing on these wooden poles, and someone pushed me off, and I fell with my head on a concrete pole,
And then the next day I went back to school, but then I threw up and had to go to hospital.
Okay,
I had
that's
a
what we call.
concussion.
Yeah, that's what we call concussion in the trade. We're really trained to look for it. So if you have any headache that's where your brain is kind of swelling up in your head and you start throwing up or start leaking stuff in your ears, then it's time to go to hospital. So hopefully, if you bang your head again, someone will be keeping a better eye on you. I'll tell you what. There's some more hands up, but we'll take some more stories in just a little while. But we have to talk about something else first. And this may prompt some other stories. So we have to talk about, are you ready? Burns. Okay, so here's the big message. If you get any sort of burn, oh, hello, we can still hear you, Henko. That's not good. That's sorted that. If you get any sort of burn, then you must immerse it in cold water for 10 minutes to cool the burn. So, and it doesn't matter whether that cool water is from a tap or in a bucket or from a drinks bottle, although if it is from a drinks bottle, you're going to need to keep running around and getting more drinks bottles. So the very bestest thing to do is to pull that hand and plunge it in water in a bucket or under a tap to cool that burn. Now, burns can come from lots of different sources, so you can get burns from touching a hot bit of metal or from touching a fire or for pouring hot liquid over your hands. You also get chemical burns and electrical burns and sunburns. The ones we get at Cubs and Scouts at camp tend to be the ones that involve some sort of fire. So not normally where people are putting the hand in the fire, but where you've got something on the fire like a pot or a kettle, and then you pick it up and you don't realize it's hot. So you're using your bare hands to touch the metal. That's what tends to burn people. The other most serious one that we've seen in one of our camps was when a young lad, he boiled up a pot of water on a camping stove, and then he had an accident and he poured it down his boot. So the whole pot of hot water went down his boot, and his foot got pretty badly burned because it took a long time to get his boot off and to get the foot cooled. So of course we should have just thrown him in the river that he was right next to. I mean, that would have helped a lot. So a little bit of burn the theory. On the right, you see some pretty gruesome images. We talk about superficial. So superficial can be a word of the day. It just means anything that looks a little bad but isn't actually all that serious. So a superficial burn is anything that's just a bit red. It's red and it's sore, but there isn't any sort of damage to the underlying hand or the arm or whatever. Partial thickness, you get a bit of blistering. So a burn that's a little bit deeper and you get a blister of nasty liquid. And then full thickness is just nasty. It's just a really nasty burn and you can see stuff in it and it's horrible. So those are basically the three stages. In America, they call those first degree, second degree, and third degree. Here we call them superficial, partial thickness, and full thickness. So how you treat those things, it's all the same. Plunge it in cold water immediately to cool the burn. If it's any of the first two, then if it's the first one, a superficial one, then you're probably going to be able to treat it where you are unless it's bigger than one palm of your hand. So if it's one palm of your hand or less, you can treat it on site. A partial thickness one, if it's bigger than about a 10-pence coin, then you're going to want a medical professional to look at it. And any full thickness burn, you're going to want to take into hospital. Now, one thing you can do is wrap it in cling film. That isn't because it's cooked. It's because once it's cooled in water, you wrap it in cling film and it just helps keep it clean and keep air away from it because air makes it hurt a bit more. And you can do that while you're going to hospital or just if you're recovering because you've got a small burn. You then assess the severity of the burn. So you can assess the severity by looking at how deep it is, like those things on the right, but also where is it? So if it's in a nasty place in your body, like on your face or on your chest, then you probably want a medical professional to look at it. Also, if you've got it from a chemical or an electrical source, again, you're going to want to get checked out. So really, the only sorts of burn that you should be treating on camp and not getting someone to look at are ones that are small and shallow, so superficial and not more than one palm of your hand. Or if you've got a blister on maybe one finger where you've touched something hot, then that's kind of all right. So I'm gonna pause there for a second and return to see whose hands are up, because some of you might have some gruesome burn stories for us, because we've all been on camp.
Hello. I was at a theme park with some of my friends, and we were on a go-kart, and one of my friends, Bella, was hanging off the front, and we suddenly stopped and she fell forward and we ran over her and she got sick with shock and she had bleeding stuff all over her. And
Okay.
she went into the medical centre and she, I think she got sick with shock there. And then her mum took her in, and then we had to lift the go-kart up because she was right under it, and she was awake, but she was really loudly crying and she wasn't listening to what we were saying.
Life is dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah.
You want to stay away from those theme parks. Go on scout camps instead. Okay, Poppy, are you back?
Basically, when I do cooking and like making the pizza that we did last week, I always get grease. I always get grease flickered at my fingers and like everything, and I always burn myself. And my dad doesn't even look, and I have to run straight into my house, put it under cold water.
So, do you think we should have shown you how to treat a burn before we showed you how to cook a pizza?
No, I don't know.
Nah. Okay. I mean, those pizzas looked really nice last night. My family made one for me and delivered it just as I was on a meeting a little bit later at night.
So I was making a hat, and I burned myself with a hot glue gun, and it blistered.
Cubs is dangerous, isn't it? All the stuff we tell you to do, you then hurt yourself. Well, it's a good job that you're doing level 2 first aid, because now you know exactly what to do. Although you probably knew what to do before, really, didn't you?
Yeah.
Hello, Malcolm. A bit How very well, thank you. Just about your boots thing, where you were going to chuck him in the river. It's the same if you're wearing synthetic fibres. Don't try to take the trousers or the top off. Just get the water on it straight away. Two things that burn really badly: plastic, which you shouldn't play with plastic bags near fires, and hot sugar, marshmallows. Last year, 2 girls had a bitchy fight, and one of them threw a marshmallow at another one, and it landed on her face. That was not good.
Yeah, and
luckily she wasn't scarred.
Anything that's like hot and sticky and sticks to you is really nasty, because you can't just knock it off, can you? It just it's really horrible. I was thinking
stuck. Anything that sticks to you.
Yeah.
My nephew, when he was about 8 years old, they were on holiday in France. I wasn't there, but this is the family story. And they were playing with some fertilizer bags, and it caught fire, and the friend threw the bag and it landed on my nephew's leg, and he's still got the scars to this day.
How you doing?
Good. So once I was making something, and I burnt myself with a glue gun on my finger, but then as I was running it under cold water, I thought it would have been cool by then, and I tried to rub it off, but then it came onto my other finger as well, and it was sticking. So once we cooled it down, my mum managed to peel it off my fingers.
Did any of your skin come off with it?
No, none of my skin came off.
Lucky.
But I can sometimes see the pink on my finger.
So a couple of weeks ago, I went on a bike ride with my dad, and I lost control of my bike, and then I fell over and grazed both of my knees, and the scabs just went away a couple of days ago.
Yeah. Be careful.
Baked beans are nasty too.
Yeah.
We went to a hotel one day, and the waiter dropped a whole plate of red hot baked beans into my son's lap.
Ooh.
I got water on it very quickly. Poor Fred.
Oh
It was
dear, oh dear.
horrendous.
I'll tell you what, let's just, I've got one more thing to tell you about, and then it's test time. So when it's test time, you're going to want that paper and pen. But just before we get to test time, we need to talk about the dead exciting subject of asthma. Oh. Now, I'm sure many of you either have asthma or you know someone who's got asthma. Now it's on the list of stuff we have to talk about here. But the reality is that all you can do with someone that's having an asthma attack is to help them to sit comfortably, to reassure them, and to help them take their inhaler. Now, most people that have asthma have some sort of inhaler, and it's normally that stuff you see at the bottom, those blue ones called Ventolin. And if you've got a Ventolin inhaler, then you normally keep it on your body, because when you're having an attack, you need that stuff. All the rest of those stuff, the red ones on the left, certainly, they're there for the long-term relief of asthma. So you take those every day, and it helps you get a bit better, it helps you cope with the condition. But they're not much use when you're actually having an attack. So the blue one at the bottom is the thing you need. So to be honest, that's all we can do. If someone's having a really, really bad asthma attack, then you're going to have to keep an eye on them. And eventually, like all of these first aid things, they may end up either a breathing or a non-breathing unconscious casualty, and we're right back at the sort of stuff we did at the beginning. But most asthma attacks are absolutely fine. It doesn't get that far. So it is test time. What we're going to do, I think we have just enough time for me to read these out for you, and then I'm going to leave them up on a slide to give you a little bit of time to look at them yourself. So get your paper and pen ready. I've got 5 questions for you. 5 questions. Only 5. Question 1. How many chest compressions and rescue breaths do you give during CPR? How many chest compressions and rescue breaths do you give during CPR? Question 2. What position should you put an unconscious and breathing casualty into? That second thing that Andy did, what's the name of that position? What position should you put an unconscious and breathing casualty into? Question 3. What immediate action do you take when someone is bleeding? What immediate action do you take when someone's bleeding?
Ready?
I think you're pretty quick, aren't you, Henko? I'm seeing other people writing still, so I'm just going to wait a few more seconds. I should have chosen someone that's a bit slower at writing. What do you think, Barney? Yeah. Okay, where am I on? Question 4. Question 4. What immediate action do you take to treat a burn? What immediate action do you take to treat a burn? What do you reckon, Barney? Are they ready? Okay, question 5. What might the operator ask you when you dial 999 or 111? Sorry, 112. What might the operator ask you when you dial 999 or 112? Yes, I realise this could be a big answer. I'll tell you what, I see another couple of people with hands up, so I'm going to make this easy. I'm going to put all the questions up on the screen so you can see them. So there are all of the questions.
Not muted.
Yeah, we can still hear you, Henko. You good with all of those, mate? Confident?
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Excellent. So I'm just going to read slowly through them just to give you one more chance to get all of these. So,
Okay.
question 1. How many chest compressions and rescue breaths do you give during CPR? Question 2. What position should you put an unconscious and breathing casualty into? Question 3. What immediate action do you take when someone is bleeding? Question 4. What immediate action do you take to treat a burn? And question 5. What might the operator ask when you dial 999 or 112?
It was my friend once. Well, we were in the playground at school, and then she tripped over, and then there was this door, and she tripped over it, and then she cracked her head open, and there was blood everywhere. She tripped over, and like her head whacked the door.
It's another one of those stories, isn't it? It's like a horror movie story. So Felicity or Andy, what's the worst injury you've seen on a scout camp or a cub camp? You know, don't spare us any gory detail because Eva loves it, obviously.
Well, there's a couple of there's at least one injury that springs to mind, which is my own. It's really, I tell you, it's really embarrassing as a scout leader, as one of your leaders, to injure yourself while on camp. Fortunately, mine was on a camp when I was teaching scout leaders how to use knives, and of course, to demonstrate proper first aid, I cut my hand. Which I think is more embarrassing than major, but I did have to go to hospital for it, just to get a couple of stitches put in. But I think that's probably the most embarrassing injury, maybe.
Mine was a parent on camp. Not the cubs are all brilliant. It's the parents you have to watch out for. Chopping wood, flew up, smacked him in the eye, and he got a nice cut under there. He was a red pack parent.
With scouts, it's normally the scout leaders' children that tend to injure themselves as well, or other leaders' children.
Yeah, I'm waiting. Although Billy turned up to summer camp with an injury this time, which got him out of most of the hike on the Sunday. But
So if you're on fire, I think you should roll over. If your clothes are on fire.
Yes, that's quite correct. Although not setting your clothes on fire would be a great plan.
Yeah.
I mean, these days we don't quite wear as much flammable clothing as they wore in the 80s. In the 80s, they used to have this thing called shell suits, and it was basically a flammable bit of cloth wrapped around another flammable bit of cloth, and it didn't take much to set them alight, and was really quite nasty. There was some horrible injuries from those. People have got slightly wise, and the clothing we wear these days tends to either melt or burn rather than burning with lots of flame. But yeah, still, if your clothing's on fire, hit the ground and roll around, that sort of thing. Thanks for that. Fiona, I see you've joined the call. How are you doing?
Sorry, I wasn't quite ready. I was just listening whilst pottering.
Okay. Hello, Fiona. So I think it's hat time, isn't it? We've got to have a bit of a hat reveal.
I can see Henko's wearing a nice hat there that he's made. I spent my Monday making this.
Well, hang on. Let me just to give this the respect it deserves, I'm just going to stop the chat because, of course, it's gone a bit crazy, and then just spotlight your video so we can admire the majesty of the hat that's been created here.
Yes, I made my hat. There's
very impressive
on the cardboard I cut up,
yeah.
And I even made the tissue flowers. I was quite impressed myself with those, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, out of what are we scoring out of 20? I mean, that's a good, like, you know, 15.
Thank you very much.
You know,
let's have a look at some of the others.
Let's do that. Let's have a look and see who's got a hat for us. So maybe if I
made with a bit of an Easter egg there, I think.
That's nice.
Yeah, there's a bit of sensible recycling there, Gideon.
I like that.
If you want to show off your hats, put your hand up, and we can find you a bit more easily. As in, put your hand up in the app. So, click on the participants button, and there should be a raise hand button there, and we should be able to see you much more easily.
Oh wow!
That's it's like a whole gardener. Although I'm not sure you've made all of that hat yourself, have you?
No, that's a recycled hat, but it's very good.
It's been Easterized, hasn't it? It's been modified and Easterized. So I definitely like that. Who else can show us? Oh, I mean, I haven't showed you my hat, of course. So I've come up with something that is both practical and decorative. I mean, you reckon? I mean,
hey!
I think you need a sort of certain expression to go with a hat like this. But you know, the 5G, they're not going to be getting me anytime soon, and neither are any of those mind readers. So you know, it's protection from you know, cosmic rays, as well as being, you know, quite attractive. Although I have to say, it is flipping hot.
It looks like you should be a Teletubby.
Yeah, it's like the silver Teletubby, isn't it? It's the silver Teletubby. But I mean, I thought, you know, I mean, you know, I like a bit of science, right? And I thought this would conduct the heat away from my head, but no, it reflects the heat back to my head. This is possibly the warmest hat I've ever worn. And I might experiment with lining my woolly hats with this when we're out in the field, because I mean, this keeps your head flipping warm. That's,
very good.
Very good.
Who else can we do it?
You made that yourself, Henko?
Is
that a sorting hat?
Is it a sorting hat? Yeah.
I think it's a sorting hat.
So Jessica's already got
Jessica.
one there.
Oh, I like that.
Is it like Italian or Irish? No.
I pressed the wrong button. I forgot to unmute her. Hold on.
Once Andy sorts out the technology, you're going to be able to talk in a minute.
Hold on.
Honest, Jessica.
There we are, hold on.
Look,
So she's drawn something about cubs there. Is it cubs having a fire?
Yeah.
Cubs on fire. Oh, we can hear you, Jessica. How are you doing?
I'm good.
You're good.
Have you got any more drawings on your hat around the back? Do you want to take us off and show us?
Cubs.
Ah, very good.
That's quite cool, isn't it? Okay, so you have to cancel the spotlight in that one, Andy, like that.
Yep. And then
click onto gallery view, and then find something else.
So I'm going to go with Finn. So spotlight.
Ooh, that's a bear in a hat.
It's a bear in a hat. Does the hat go on your head as well?
No.
No. Okay.
There's a pop-up sign on the back saying
So that's like a helmet, isn't it, that hat?
Yeah.
Camouflaged.
I was going to say I can hardly see it. Right, let's
very good.
And then who else?
Marnie looks good.
Marnie, yep. Let's spotlight Marnie.
Yeah, very
good.
Oh yes.
Classic rabbit theme. Can't beat it. It's the carrots, aren't they? The carrots. Yeah, I knew that.
And flowers all around.
And then there's some bows at the back.
Very nice.
Very good.
Chicks.
Oh yes, chicks as well.
Very good. I mean, I'm not saying I put minimal effort into this, but yours looks better than mine. Although mine has practical value. I'm saying you won't be getting me with the 5G.
Molly's got rabbit ears as well, haven't you, Molly?
Oh, got to find Molly. Hold on, there she is.
Next door.
Cancel the spotlight video, Andy.
Oh, and I've got to unmute her now as well.
It's all very rabbity, isn't it?
once I've spotlighted someone, I can't work out how to unmute them. It's very disconcerting.
Don't worry, Molly. We'll talk to you in a minute once Andy sorts the technology out.
Oh, find participant. There we are. You can talk now.
Okay.
Hello.
The ears were supposed to be a rabbit, but then they turned out a little bit too small, so I made a mouse instead.
Mouse is good. We don't mind a mouse.
I'll tell you what. Let me do one, Andy. I'm just going to find Simon Williams, who's been waiting patiently with his with his hat there.
Yeah.
Oh, look at his eyes.
But, yes, Simon. Very nice. I think we can hear you, by the way. You can talk to us.
Oh, I could try and play a tune, or
Are you supposed to be Slash?
correct.
Well, I wasn't expecting it to be Axl Rose.
It's very odd having this hair stuff. But
Yeah.
for those of you that don't really know who I am, that's what I normally look like. So the hair's a bit different.
Okay. I think I'm going to Rue next. I can see Rue. That's looking lovely.
Oh,
And
lovely
if I,
Easter egg.
If I just unmute you.
Based on Easter. And there's
Yeah.
you see chicks. There's some chicks on the top.
How did you make it?
I made it with cutting out cardboard in an egg shape and painted it glue. Then I stuck glue, pom-poms, paper and ribbon on.
It looks
Okay,
very nice.
Maggie's is
Maggie.
rather lovely.
Yeah, well, I'm coming to Maggie. Hello, Maggie.
Hello. I made like a I've got a hairband and I attached it to the hairband and I put a bow at the top and colored these. And I put a chick at the top, so it's Easter based.
And even the
That's
chick
lovely.
is wearing a hat.
Yeah.
I just had this idea for a warlord helmet. Should I keep it on?
Yeah.
All right.
That's a bit harsh.
Yeah. He's got a wizard helmet. Not really a helmet, but yeah, just to say this is supposed to be Jagger's teeth with blood on it. Yeah.
Hello.
Oh, hello, chaps.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Can you talk us through your hats?
Explain your hat.
So my hat is a Pikachu hat.
That's definitely Pikachu. Yeah.
Oh, yes, I see.
And a tail.
Very good.
My hat is a piece of paper hanging over here. It's like a party hat.
Yeah. Very good.
It reminds me a bit of Upsy Daisy. What do you got?
It's a hat.
So tell us about your hat.
I'm not sure what to say, but
You're not selling it, are you? I mean, I made something out of tin foil, and I explained why it was a marvelous innovation. You know.
Is it an origami hat? Have you made it all out of folded paper?
yeah,
Have you used any glue to hold it together, or is it all held together without glue?
it's held together without glue.
Cool.
That's magic. Katie Knott, let's see if we can talk to you. Hello, Katie.
Hello. So I made my hair. So I knitted my hair. We started it a couple of years ago, and then when we got the email about the Cubs meeting, I found it. So I thought I'd finish it, and then me and my dad made this pom pom together. It's very fluffy one. I like just feeling it.
So you knitted that hat yourself?
Yeah.
That's some skills right there.
Wonderful. That is really, really good.
So how much do you charge for doing those, Katie?
I don't know.
And will it take 2 years to get another one?
Yeah, work out a price, and then I might give you a custom order.
Okay.
You
What
want
colour?
tinfoil woven in.
The
Yeah, my
tinfoil
head's probably
lining.
bigger than yours. Yeah, tinfoil lining. Yeah, yeah.
Me. Hi.
Hello, me.
I have a little origami hat, not much, but just a little one. I can't really wear it though. If I
Yeah.
wear it, it falls down my head.
You need a bigger sheet of paper.
Yeah.
All right. Looks like
Yay.
Looks like Teddy McKee is trying to get in. With some trepidation, I click the Teddy McKee button. Hello, Teddy McKee.
Hello.
Unfortunately, you've got a silly background on, so we can't really see your hat.
Lean forward a bit, Ted. Okay. Yeah.
And it's green, so it's
Some
into
sort
the
of helmet as well.
Yes.
And you appear to be in an operating theatre.
Yes.
on Star Trek somewhere, I think.
Yes.
Thanks, Ted.
Very good.
Okay. Okay, we've just about got to the end of everyone with their hands up and their hats on. So let me try and tie this together in my extremely professional way. So just a reminder of what you need to do. If you want your level 2 emergency aid, then you need to take a photograph of yourself doing that CPR thing. You need to take a photograph of your test answers. You need to send them both to remotescouting@leatherheaddistrictscouts.org.uk. Make sure someone has written down that address. It really helps when you send it through if you put your name on it, because sometimes the address you send it from might be your parents' address. So we need to know your name and your pack, so that we can find your leader and send it on. That's how you claim your level 2 emergency aid badge. For next week, what are we doing, Fiona? Next week?
Oliver is delivering DIY.
Oliver is doing DIY next week. So all of those problems around the house that you are winding your parents up, Oliver will help you fix next week. So until any challenge for next week, Fiona?
No, we're going to give them a week off a challenge.
A week off challenge.
A hard one.
Yeah, I like it, because you can't have a challenge every week, otherwise it's just too challenging. You know, you got to save yourself. So so with that, we know what we're doing next week. We're back here. We're doing DIY with Oliver. We know how to get your level 2 first aid badge. If you need a reminder about anything, if you need to find anything, then give us a shout. Remote Scouting at leatherheaddistrictscouts.org.uk, and we will tell you where to find it. In the meantime, I'm just going to mute everyone, leave the chat on, give you a couple of minutes of saying hello to, or say goodbye to your friends, and then see you next week. So cheers all.
Bye.
Thanks Andy. Thanks Fiona. Thanks Rosie.
Bye.
Thanks friends.